Welcome to TYT Sports, everybody. Jason Rubin here, about to be joined by Andre Snellings, our Hoops Good Doctor, coming in from Detroit, Michigan. We have a lot to talk about on this Friday. It's going to be a very fun show, and we're going to start off with the overall question of who the best point guard in the NBA is today. Now, many people are probably just going to say, well, it's Steph Curry, because he's got a 47.0 PER, which is just ridiculous. But the debate it can't end there, because basketball is a long season. The point guard position is so important to the game, and there's so many different definitions of what a point guard can be. A shooting point guard, you have, of course, the pure point guard abilities of certain players. So first off, Andre, my man, how are we doing?
Doing good, man. How's it going?
It's good. It's Friday. I love the Friday atmosphere. I love the vibe. I was scrolling through the news today and I saw some things on Penny Hardaway's top 10 plays, James Harden being real about Allen Iverson. So just a lot of great NBA-related news. And, I guess we could transition with that because speaking of AI, one of the best point guards of all time in the NBA, I was going to start off with you. If it's not Steph Curry, who is the best point guard in the NBA?
Yeah, it's funny. Steph Curry, I guess, is the new default. But before that, it was Chris Paul. Mm-hmm. It's been Chris Paul for years. He's a better pure point guard than Steph. But obviously Steph can shoot from 72 feet, which makes him, gives him a spacing effect that nobody else can have. So I would say Chris Paul is still the default second option with the Tasmanian Devil, Russell Westbrook, coming in at third.
It's funny because that's exactly what I have written down, like in order: Curry, CP3, Westbrook. But when we look at Chris Paul, and as you mentioned, the pure point guard ability that he has, he led the league last year in assist percentage, and he is the pick and roll master. I mean, you watch this guy play. His high IQ's always been there, all the way back when he came into the league in 2005. And, of course, on the Clippers, one of the major things that I think is going to help Chris Paul, at least from a statistic perspective over the last few games this season and last year, as Blake Griffin's jump shot gets better and better and better, his assist ability is going to get better and better because he's going to find Blake right on that, right around the free throw line where he seems to be finding his sweet spot. So at least statistically there, Chris Paul, it doesn't seem like he's lost a step, and that was a big conversation last year. Oh, is he lost a step? Can he be clutch? Is that a factor? Do you think Chris Paul can still be the best point guard in the league overall, or is Steph Curry just not going to come down to earth at any time?
I think he still can be because, you mentioned stats a couple times, and you mentioned PER. As you may or may not know about me, I'm a bit of a nerd. I'm an NBA stats nerd. And while the box score stats, the PERs, they have their place, I really like the non-box score stat approach. I like the synergy sports, watch the plays and keep track of the stats that we didn't really look at before. And I really like the plus minus stats. And what the plus minus stats have kind of told us over these last, I guess 2 decades or so that we have the data for, is that players can have a big direct effect on the game, but they can also have a big indirect effect. And so a guy like Chris Paul or Steph Curry, Steph Curry, he's going to have great box score stats. But what the box score doesn't tell you is that because the other team is spending all their energy trying to defend him, everybody else's job is a lot easier. And so Chris Paul, even if he's not as, maybe he's no longer at his pure athletic peak, he can still run the team and get his team into position so that their jobs are easier. So you talked about great Blake Griffin starting to make his shots. That helps Paul, but more than that, Paul putting Blake in position, I think, helps him. The fact that Paul can knock down his jumper so consistently opens up everything in the middle for DeAndre Jordan. So I think Paul and Curry are kind of on an island in that respect as far as their indirect effect, with maybe Damian Lillard and his crazy three-point shooting, maybe the next one up. And then you got a guy like Russell Westbrook who does everything on the ball and is just so good at it that his impact is almost as large as theirs.
There was a great example of Russell Westbrook in yesterday's game. And late in the fourth quarter against the Thunder, Westbrook drove straight to the hoop. And he kind of got stopped by 3 Bulls defenders, in which only Jimmy Butler, for the most part, was kind of in that passing lane, but not the right one. Ibaka just slips back ever so slightly, and Westbrook finds him. Out of all the point guards in the league, there's something about Russell Westbrook, at least the direct impact, that every time he goes in, he draws it seems like he draws more attention than someone like Curry. Just because Curry, we know he's going to shoot from 3. He's, as you mentioned, 72 feet being the average distance. Obviously, not really.
Yeah, I mean, see, the thing with Curry and where he draws a lot of attention that maybe you don't notice with Westbrook, because Westbrook has the ball and he's going to the rim, it's obvious that everyone's collapsing on him. With Curry, especially him and Draymond Green on that pick and roll, when Draymond sets the pick, more so than any other player really that I've ever seen, teams have to respect Curry out to at least 25 or 30 feet, which means that they're trapping that pick and roll, which means that the rest of the team is 4-on-3. So Draymond Green is essentially leading a 4-on-3 fast break out of the half court, So it's not obvious maybe that it's happening, but it just really opens things up for Draymond and everything else that the other team has to just put so much energy into defending Curry, whether he has the ball or not. Westbrook, on the other hand, he's coming in, and if you don't put significant personnel in front of him, he's dunking on everybody. And I think I think the other teams know it. So, he does draw the attention, but maybe the difference is he draws the attention near the rim. So the defense is still kind of near where they want to be. Whereas Curry pulls that defensive center point out past the three-point line, which opens up the lane for the higher percentage shots for his teammates.
Exactly. And of course, as we saw precisely with Harrison Barnes getting a little bit hot against the Clippers on, I believe that was Wednesday night in one of the best games through 5 games of the season. I mean, there's been a lot of great NBA games so far, and that one being in specific, it was the first time we saw the Warriors really challenged all season long. So there was a lot to take away from that. You mentioned before as well, Damian Lillard, who I have as my 4th best point guard in the league, if we're making some pseudo rankings here, at least the top 5. Out of all the guards in the league, I find that Lillard has shown the biggest improvement in some specific statistics. The one big one, which I'm sure being the basketball nerd that we are here, and especially you, my friend, his biggest improvement has been driving at the hoop, because last season and his previous season, he finished about 50%, and now he's finishing closer to 65%. I think it's 62, which just shows he's making the right adjustments, and he's not simply getting blocked by these bigger centers and bigger power forwards in the league. And this also affected his defense. When Wes Matthews went down last season, those statistics didn't favor Damian Lillard so much, but it just shows how much was on him to really be the focal point of that offense, even with Aldridge still on that team. Now they have nobody on that team. He has not a great supporting cast, and he continues to show that he's a guy that can be built around. I don't think Lillard's going to get to the point of the Curry or Chris Paul, at least this season, but he's someone to definitely keep an eye on. I'm curious if you saw anything else from Damian Lillard and the Blazers this season.
Oh, yeah. Lillard, and I guess if we were adding a 5th to round out the top 5, I would say it's probably John Wall. And so I would definitely put Lillard in that Curry mold, and Wall maybe closer to the Westbrook mold as far as just the athletic beast that's going to get into the lane and make things happen. As far as Lillard in particular, he's definitely modified his game since now he's the man. When Aldridge was there, I think the whole Blazers offense was kind of built around getting mid-range jumpers, because that was kind of Aldridge's comfort zone.
It was his forte for the most part, yeah.
Yeah, his forte, exactly. So I think that Lillard did not necessarily fit perfectly in that. So he played a sidekick role. He said, okay, well, if Aldridge is going to be our main focal scorer and his area is the paint to mid-range, then I'll only be a three-point shooter. Whereas now the offense is built around him. He's the man. He's handling the ball. He gets to shoot. They want to make the offense so that he can shoot where he wants to shoot. And he's showing, as you said, he has the ability to go into the lane, to finish in the lane. And no, I don't think he's going to be Curry this year, but I think you could definitely make the argument that he's as good as Curry was 2 years ago, and he's about 2 years younger than Curry. And if there's anybody in the league who's I would love to see have a one-on-one three-point shootout with Curry, it would be Damian Lillard, because when he gets hot just like Curry does. So So yeah, I mean, I think he's not there now, but as you said, he's one to keep an eye on.
Right, and it's one of those things where if you're like the league pass obsessed audience as we are, that's one of the things. Like, I'm going to watch a lot of the Blazers this season, even without Aldridge. They went from being one of the most fun teams to watch in the league to still being a fun team, an enjoyable team to watch, just because of Damian Lillard. He has that kind of impact on the court. And as I guess you just basically came in, looked at my cheat sheet here of my top five, because I had John Wall at number 5 also, and just the little bit about John Wall. I mean, the only thing that keeps him in, I guess, that tier 2 or 2.5, depending on how you're ranking these, is last season out of the 500 pick and roll qualifying guards, he finished last in scoring efficiency. But in terms, I guess what I'm trying to say here is when Wall came into the league, he was pegged as only a guy that could run the court in about 2.2 seconds and 2 dribbles. He was just a fast point guard. And they weren't sure if they can make an offense revolve around him. I was thrilled to see him prove a lot of people wrong, a lot of scouts wrong, and start succeeding in the offense, averaging 10-plus assists a game last season. So in terms of John Wall, he's someone, of course, keep an eye on. But right now, I think it's not the boldest statement in the world. Curry and Chris Paul are your best point guards in the league, but Westbrook not too far behind. In terms, lastly, I wanted to at least finish up with is Derrick Rose is not the best point guard in the league, but if you watch the Bulls and the Thunder of last night, I love what Fred Hoiberg is doing with the Bulls offense. I love that they're getting back to seeing Rose penetrate the lane, and hopefully he can stay healthy. A lot of credit to Jimmy Butler, too, in that offense. But Derrick Rose, any thoughts on Derrick Rose from last night's game that you saw that you wanted to point out, in terms of where, if we're talking about point guards, you can't not talk about Derrick Rose?
Yeah, Derrick Rose is an interesting case because to me, he won the MVP early. Like, he wasn't, in my opinion, the most valuable player in the NBA that year. If we were on this list we're looking at now, he would have been maybe around John Wall, kind of top 5-ish, but I didn't think he was the most valuable player. Then after he won it, he's had so many injuries that it's hard to say whether he's even going to be a Bull next year. Like, are they getting tired of this situation? I think Rose, he's another one that he creates off of the penetration. So, he could be in that Russell Westbrook family that we've been talking about. He relies on his athleticism. And so that's why the injuries really hurt him. He doesn't have a pure jump shot, and he's not a pure floor general either, like Paul is. So if he's not an athletic beast, then kind of what is he? I think he's still, a good player when he's healthy. I'm sure the Bulls love to have him out there, but he's just not what he used to be. And, as a basketball fan, that makes me sad. And I kind of keep hoping for it to get better. But, I guess he's just got to learn how to not throw the 101-mile-per-hour fastball. Like the pitchers, they learn how to throw junk pitches and stuff. He's got to pick up that aspect of the game, and I don't know if he's there yet.
Right, definitely needs to make the right adjustments, but of course, interesting to keep an eye on. Before I go, the last thing that has to be mentioned, the best play from that Bulls Thunder game, undoubtedly, was nothing to do with Derrick Rose. It was Jimmy Butler spinning one-footed, falling into the stands, three-pointer that was wet. It hit nothing but the net. And he runs back, and everyone's like, oh, but Derrick Rose had 29 points, and he's back to MVP form, which I thought was great to watch.
I mean, he gets the publicity, but yeah, I think Jimmy Butler is probably the best player on that team.
Absolutely.
And we can't leave this. We talked about John Wall. You have to mention the John Wall dance.
And at guard, 6'4" from Kentucky, welcome to DC, number 2, John Wall.
In terms of best celebrations amongst point guards, that might go to John Wall. So we'll have to maybe do a new list next week when we see John Wall dancing some more. At least who's got the best celebration in the NBA? I always love Wes Matthews when he's shooting the arrows. Awesome. In terms of the audience, though, that's who we're throwing to next. We want to know who you think the best point guard in the NBA is, and give us your top 5 just for fun. Andre and I share the same, because Andre obviously copied all my answers here, with Curry, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Damian Lillard, and John Wall in order. Who do you guys got? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Follow Andre at Professor DRZ on Twitter. Make sure to check out his Hoops Lab column on RotoWire on Wednesdays, Thursdays, Tuesdays? What day?
Hoops Lab comes out on Tuesdays.
Hoops Lab comes out on Tuesdays. Gives you some fantasy advice for your team, as well as some great anecdotes in terms of what Andre's been up to in the engineering labs. So as always, from TYT Sports, this has been the Shot Clock. I forgot to mention that. We'll see you next time.